Don't move. The words cut through the Arizona evening like a blade. Liam watched as his father, the man he'd spent 7 months tracking down, reached toward him with trembling hands and tears streaming down his face, only to be yanked backward by someone who looked exactly like Liam. "We had an agreement," his twin said, his grip on their father's arm tight enough to make the older man wince. Liam stood frozen on that perfectly manicured driveway, his worn backpack suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The mansion's marble facade gleamed in the sunset behind them, 3 figures on the terrace steps like some twisted family portrait. Douglas Marsh, silver-haired in an expensive suit. Natalie, elegant in designer clothes, her hand flying to her mouth. And Cameron, Liam's mirror image in a tailored blazer. But Cameron's eyes weren't confused or shocked like Liam had imagined 1,000 times. They were cold, calculating, knowing. Douglas jerked away from Cameron's grip, staring at his other son with something that looked like horror. "Cameron, what did you?" "Welcome home, brother," Cameron interrupted, his smile spreading slowly across his face as he looked directly at Liam. "You're right on time." The words should have sounded warm, welcoming. Instead, they landed like a threat, each syllable dripping with something dark Liam couldn't name. Right on time. On time for what? Little did Liam know, those 4 words would unravel a web of deception that had been carefully constructed for 18 years, and standing face to face with the brother he'd dreamed of meeting was about to become his worst nightmare. To understand how Liam ended up on that driveway, staring into the eyes of a twin who'd been expecting him, we have to go back to the day everything changed. Before we get into that, here's a special shout out to Douglas Patel watching from India. Thank you for being one of our amazing supporters and engaging with the channel. A character in the story was named in your honor. If you'd also like to get a shout out in the next video, please like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from, and you'll be given a shout out. Thank you. Now let's get into the story. 18 years of waiting came down to a manila envelope and a social worker's tired smile. "Happy birthday, Liam," Ms. Rodriguez said, sliding the packet across her cluttered desk at Riverside Group Home. "You're officially free." Free. The word tasted bitter as Liam opened the envelope with shaking hands. Discharge papers. A list of community resources he'd never use. And at the bottom, a sealed file marked, "Birth Records, Confidential." His fingers tore through the seal before Ms. Rodriguez could stop him. The birth certificate fragment inside was faded, partially redacted, but 3 details stood out like they'd been written in fire. Twin birth. Mother, Sarah Marsh. Father, Douglas Marsh. Twin. Liam's voice cracked. "I have a twin." Ms. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. "The file notes indicate your brother remained with family. You were placed separately as an infant." "I'm sorry, Liam. That's all the information we have." Liam stared at the paper until the words blurred. 18 years in the system. 18 years of shared bedrooms in group homes across Phoenix, wearing donated Goodwill clothes that never quite fit, standing in line at food banks with other forgotten kids. And somewhere out there, his twin had been living a completely different life. The next morning, Liam walked out of Riverside for the last time, his entire life packed into a secondhand backpack. No tearful goodbyes. No promises to stay in touch. Just the birth certificate fragment tucked into his pocket and a name to chase. Douglas Marsh. The Circle K in Tempe hired him that same week for overnight shifts. Liam didn't mind the fluorescent lights or the drunk college students stumbling in at 2 a.m. The job came with something more valuable than minimum wage: internet access during the dead hours between midnight and dawn. He started searching. Douglas Marsh. Phoenix. Real estate developer. Marsh Development Corporation. The results filled his phone screen, each article revealing more about the man who'd given him life and then let him disappear into the system. Luxury condominiums. Scottsdale estates. Charity galas. A business empire built while Liam slept in bunk beds and survived on donated canned goods. Then, 3 weeks into his search, Liam found the photograph that changed everything. It was from the Phoenix Business Journal's coverage of a charity auction. Douglas Marsh with son Cameron at the annual Children's Hospital Foundation Gala. The caption meant nothing. The image meant everything. The boy standing beside Douglas looked exactly like Liam. Same dark hair. Same sharp jawline. Same eyes that Liam saw in mirrors every morning. Cameron wore a designer tuxedo and a confident smile that suggested he'd never questioned where his next meal would come from. Liam's hands trembled as he zoomed in on Cameron's face. His twin, his brother, living in luxury while Liam scraped by on overnight shifts at a convenience store. "You okay, man?" his co-worker Jake asked, noticing Liam's pale expression. "Yeah," Liam lied. "Just tired." But he wasn't tired. He was furious, heartbroken, desperate. He saved every image he could find of Douglas and Cameron Marsh. Society pages, business profiles, Instagram posts from Cameron's private school friends that mentioned him. Each photograph felt like proof of a life stolen from him. The decision came easily after that. On his official discharge date, Liam cashed his final paycheck, packed his backpack, and walked away from the only world he'd ever known. No forwarding address, no safety net, just a beat-up Honda Civic he'd bought for $800 and an address in Scottsdale's Paradise Valley that he'd traced through property records. 7 months of living in that car followed. Odd jobs, day labor gigs, washing dishes at a Denny's in Tempe, detailing cars at a luxury dealership in Scottsdale where he'd sometimes see vehicles like the ones parked in Douglas Marsh's driveway. Every dollar saved, every lead followed, every night spent parked in different lots to avoid police attention. He learned Douglas's routine, watched the mansion from a distance, saw Cameron come and go in a Tesla Model S, observed Natalie, Douglas's wife, based on wedding announcement articles, leaving for country club lunches, built a picture of the family that should have been his. And then, on a warm October evening, Liam finally drove through Paradise Valley and parked across from those iron gates. The mansion looked even more impressive up close. Mediterranean architecture, perfectly manicured lawns, palm trees swaying in the breeze. Everything he'd never had, displayed like a museum exhibit of the life that could have been. His finger hovered over the call button on the gate intercom. 7 months of searching, 18 years of questions. One button, press away from answers. Have you ever discovered something about your past that changed everything you thought you knew? Maybe you found out you were adopted, or that you had siblings you never knew existed. Those moments reshape your entire understanding of who you are. Share your story in the comments below, because what Liam was about to discover would make his birth certificate revelation look like the opening page of a much darker story. He pressed the button. The intercom crackled. "Yes. My name is Liam Marsh," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm here to see Douglas Marsh. Tell him his other son is here." Silence. Then the gates began to swing open. Liam's heart hammered as he walked up the curved driveway, backpack slung over one shoulder, the Arizona sunset casting long shadows across marble and money. He didn't know what he expected. Shock, maybe. Tears. Explanations. Apologies. What he got instead was 3 figures on the terrace steps, frozen like they'd been expecting him. And the look on Cameron's face that made Liam's blood run cold. Not surprise, but recognition. His twin had known he was coming. Security guards flanked Liam as they walked him through the gates, their hands hovering near their belts like he was a threat. Through the mansion's tall windows, he could see Douglas arguing with Cameron, the older man's gestures growing more animated while Cameron stood rigid, shaking his head. "Let him in." Douglas's voice carried through the evening air as they approached. "That's my son." "Dad, you can't be serious," Cameron shot back. "Look at him. This is obviously some kind of—" "I said let him in." The security guard stepped aside as Liam climbed the terrace steps. Up close, the mansion was even more overwhelming. Marble columns, crystal chandeliers visible through the entrance, the kind of wealth that made his 7 months living in a Honda feel like a different universe. Douglas stood in the doorway, and for the first time, Liam saw his father's face clearly. The resemblance was undeniable. Same nose, same jawline softened by age. But it was Douglas's eyes that hit hardest, filled with tears and something that looked like hope mixed with grief. "Liam," Douglas breathed, his voice breaking. He moved forward with trembling hands extended. "I thought I'd lost you forever." Before Liam could respond, Cameron stepped between them. "Stop." His voice was ice. He could be anyone. A con artist who found some photos online and decided to cash in on a resemblance. "Cameron, look at him," Natalie said quietly from the doorway. She was studying both twins with an expression Liam couldn't read. "Look at both of you standing together." Liam and Cameron locked eyes, and it was like staring into a mirror that hated him. Everything was identical except for their clothes and the cold calculation in Cameron's expression. "Coincidence," Cameron said, but his voice wavered slightly. Good genes and better Photoshop. This is a scam, Dad. Can't you see that? Douglas shook his head, wiping his eyes. No, no, I knew there were twins. Your mother told me, his voice caught. Sarah told me one of you didn't make it, that there were complications. But looking at you now, Liam, I should have questioned it. I should have searched harder. You knew? Liam's voice came out sharper than intended. You knew I existed and you never looked for me? I thought you were dead, Douglas said, the words heavy with 18 years of guilt. Sarah showed me a death certificate. I held a funeral. I mourned you. He took another step toward Liam, bypassing Cameron entirely. Where have you been? Who raised you? Nobody raised me, Liam said, the words tasting like ash. I grew up in group homes. Phoenix foster system. I aged out 3 months ago. The color drained from Douglas's face. Foster care? But Sarah said she was keeping the surviving twin. She said, he turned to Cameron. She told me she was raising you herself. She was, Cameron interjected quickly, for the first few years, until you got custody. This doesn't prove anything. He could have researched our family history, found public records. This is exactly what con artists do. They exploit grief and guilt. Natalie descended the steps slowly, her heels clicking against marble. She positioned herself between the twins, looking from one to the other. Cameron, stop. I've seen enough crime documentaries to know what con artists look like, and this isn't it. She turned to Liam, her voice softening. What's your birth date? March 15th, 2007, Liam said. Cameron's jaw clenched. That was his birthday too, and everyone in the room knew it. What was your mother's name? Natalie pressed. Sarah Marsh. At least, that's what it said on my birth certificate fragment. I never met her. Douglas made a sound like he'd been punched. She gave you up. She actually gave you up and told me you died. He moved toward Liam again, and this time Cameron grabbed his father's arm hard enough to make him wince. Dad, think about this logically, Cameron said, desperation creeping into his careful composure. Anyone could get that information. Birth records aren't sealed forever. This is a calculated attack on our family, probably because of the company's recent valuation. Don't let emotion cloud. Let go of me, Douglas said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. Cameron released him like he'd been burned. Douglas closed the distance between himself and Liam, reaching up to cup his face with both hands. You have her eyes. Sarah's eyes. And my father's chin. Tears streamed freely now. My God. 18 years. 18 years you were out there alone. For a moment, Liam let himself believe this was real. That he'd found his father. That the years of sleeping in shared bedrooms and wearing donated clothes might actually mean something if they led to this. Then Cameron spoke again, his voice deadly calm. If you're really my twin, you won't mind a DNA test. Right here. Right now. We can have results in hours if we pay for the rush processing. Cameron, Natalie warned. No, it's fine, Liam said, meeting his twin's cold stare. Test me. I'm not going anywhere. Something flickered across Cameron's face then, not relief, but rage. Pure, undiluted rage that he masked almost instantly with a tight smile. Excellent. I'll call our family attorney. That won't be necessary, Douglas said firmly. But we will do the test, Liam. Not because I doubt you, but because we need documentation. Legal protection for you. Cameron's facade cracked wider, just for a second, and Liam saw something in his twin's eyes that made his stomach turn. This wasn't about doubt or protecting the family. Cameron didn't want him here. More than that, Cameron had expected him to show up. Before Liam could process that realization, Cameron grabbed Douglas's elbow. Dad, a word. Privately. Now. Cameron, I don't think. Now. Douglas hesitated, looking between his sons, then nodded. Wait here, Liam. Please. We'll sort this out. If you're hooked on this story and want to see how it unfolds, hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, but means everything to us. Don't let this story disappear from your feed, because what happens next will explain why Cameron's reaction wasn't surprise. It was fear of his carefully constructed world falling apart. We've got so much more to reveal. As Douglas and Cameron disappeared into a side hallway, their voices already rising in argument, Natalie approached Liam with a sad smile. Come inside. Sit down. You look exhausted. Her eyes held sympathy and something else. Something that looked like she'd been expecting him to. We have a lot to talk about. Natalie led Liam through the marble foyer into a sitting room that probably cost more than every place he'd ever lived combined. leather furniture, original artwork, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the illuminated pool. She gestured to a couch, but Liam remained standing, too wired to sit. Down the hall, Douglas and Cameron's voices escalated behind a closed door. "You can't just accept this," Cameron was saying, his words muffled but audible. "We need to be smart about." "He's my son," Douglas cut him off. "Your brother. You don't know that for certain." "I know it in my bones, Cameron. The same way I knew something was wrong when your mother told me he died." Footsteps approached. The study door flew open, and Cameron stormed out, Douglas following close behind. They entered the sitting room, and Natalie's expression hardened in a way that made Liam think she'd been waiting for this moment. "Tell him the truth, Cameron," Natalie said quietly. "Or I will." Cameron froze mid-step. "Natalie, stay out of this." "Tell him," she repeated, her voice steady but laced with warning. "Tell Liam how long you've known he existed." The silence that followed felt like a held breath. Douglas looked between his wife and his son, confusion morphing into something darker. "Cameron? What is she talking about?" Cameron's jaw clenched. For a moment, Liam thought he'd deny it. Then his twin laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "Fine. You want the truth? I found out about him 5 years ago. I was 13, looking through Dad's safe for my trust fund documents because I wanted to know how much I'd inherit." He turned to Liam with zero remorse in his eyes. There was a sealed envelope marked confidential, twin adoption. "I photographed everything." Liam felt the room tilt. 5 years? You've known about me since we were 13. The adoption records had your placement information, group home addresses, caseworker names. Everything I needed to know you were real and alive. Cameron crossed his arms. "And yes, I kept it to myself." Douglas sank into the nearest chair, his face ashen. "You knew you had a brother, and you never said anything?" "I did better than that," Cameron said, his voice dripping with contempt. "I used it. I told you I'd found the records, Dad. Told you I'd exposed the whole story. The secret twin, the adoption, Mom's lies. Unless you gave me early access to my trust fund and put me on track to run the company." "You blackmailed your own father?" Liam's voice came out strangled. "I leveraged information," Cameron corrected. "Business 101. And it worked. I got everything I wanted, and you," he gestured at Liam, "stayed exactly where you were. Win-win." Douglas's hands shook as he gripped the armrests. "Cameron, I gave you everything because I thought I was protecting you. Protecting both of you. You said if the story got out, it would destroy our family's reputation, that it would hurt your brother wherever he was." His voice broke. "You made me believe I was doing the right thing. You were doing what benefited me," Cameron said simply. "Which was the point?" Liam stepped forward, fists clenched. "I was in group homes, sleeping in rooms with 5 other kids, eating donated food, wearing clothes from Goodwill. And you knew. You knew where I was, and you did nothing. Why would I?" Cameron met his gaze without flinching. "You were a threat. A complication. Better to leave you where I found you." "You're insane," Liam breathed. "I'm practical," Cameron corrected. "You think this world rewards nice? You think success comes from sharing what's yours? I saw an opportunity, and I took it." Natalie moved to stand beside Liam, her presence steadying. "Tell him the rest, Cameron. Tell him why you really wanted him to stay lost." Cameron's eyes narrowed. "Natalie, I'm warning you. Douglas has terminal cancer," Natalie said, her words landing like bombs. "Pancreatic. Stage 4. He was diagnosed 2 months ago. He has weeks left, maybe less." Liam's world stopped. He'd just found his father, and now he was losing him? Douglas nodded slowly, tears streaming. "It's true. I'm dying, Liam. And I'm so sorry you had to find out like this." "What does that have to do with?" Liam started, then stopped as understanding dawned. He looked at Cameron. "The inheritance." Natalie nodded. "The family trust has specific provisions. If both biological sons are legally acknowledged before Douglas's death, the inheritance splits equally between them. $50 million each, plus equal shares in Marsh Development Corporation. But if only one son exists in legal records when he dies," Cameron finished, his smile returning, "that son inherits everything. The full $100 million. Complete control of the company. No splitting. No sharing. What would you do if you discovered your own twin had been sabotaging your life for years? Not just ignoring you, but actively working to keep you trapped in a system that failed you? Would you try to understand their reasoning, or would you cut them off completely? Tell us in the comments. because what Liam was about to discover would make this betrayal look like just the beginning. You wanted me to stay in foster care, Liam said slowly, the full picture crystallizing. Not just because it was convenient. You needed me to stay lost until Dad died, so you could inherit everything. Technically, I needed you to stay legally unacknowledged, Cameron corrected. Whether you were lost or not didn't matter, as long as Dad never officially recognized you as his son before the cancer took him. Douglas stood abruptly, his face flushed with rage. You've been counting down the days until I die? Planning how to keep your brother from his birthright? Our birthright, Cameron shot back. I was raised in this house. I attended the right schools. I learned the business. I earned every dollar of that inheritance. He gestured dismissively at Liam. Some foster kid who shares my DNA. Liam moved before he could think, lunging at Cameron. Douglas stepped between them, catching Liam's shoulder. Don't. He's not worth it. Get your hands off me, Liam snarled. But the fight drained out of him as quickly as it came. He looked at Douglas, this father he'd just met. Why? Why did you let him do this? I thought I was protecting you, Douglas said, his voice hollow. Cameron said if the story came out, you'd be hounded by media, that your life would be destroyed by scandal. I believed I was keeping you safe by staying silent. He turned to Cameron with devastation in his eyes. I never imagined my own son could be this cruel. Cameron straightened his blazer, composure returning. Call it what you want, Dad. But I'm not apologizing for protecting what's mine. Natalie's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Then you're going to need a better lawyer, because if Douglas acknowledged both of you before he died, Cameron would lose half of everything. Natalie walked to a desk in the corner and pulled out a manila folder, her movements deliberate. I've been gathering evidence for 6 months, ever since I discovered what Cameron was doing. She opened the folder, spreading documents across the coffee table. Bank transfers, emails, receipts, everything. Cameron's composure finally cracked. Natalie, what the hell are you? Shut up, she said, her voice cold enough to silence him. She handed the first document to Liam. This is a wire transfer from Cameron's personal account to a private investigation firm called Sentinel Security. $50,000 over 3 years. Look at the memo line. Liam's hands shook as he read. Subject monitoring, Phoenix metro area. They tracked you, Natalie continued. Every group home transfer, every school enrollment, every job application. Cameron knew exactly where you were at all times. Douglas stood slowly, moving to look over Liam's shoulder. His face went gray. Cameron, tell me this isn't real. It's completely real, Natalie answered for him. She pulled out another document. This one's worse. A payment to a lawyer named Richard Kowalski. $20,000. The date corresponds exactly to when Liam tried to file for emancipation at 16. Liam's breath caught. How do you know about that? Because I tracked down Mr. Kowalski after I found the payment record, Natalie said. He was very forthcoming once I explained that obstruction of a minor's legal rights could cost him his license. He admitted Cameron paid him to delay the paperwork, file motions, create bureaucratic nightmares, keep you trapped in the system for 2 more years. The memory hit Liam like a physical blow. He'd been 16, desperate to escape a particularly bad group home placement. A social worker had connected him with Kowalski, who'd seemed genuinely helpful at first. Then the delays started. Missing documents, scheduling conflicts, court dates pushed back again and again. By the time Liam turned 18, he'd given up. You did that. Liam turned to Cameron, his voice barely above a whisper. You kept me in that place for 2 more years. Cameron's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. There's more, Natalie said grimly. She laid out a series of emails. These are communications between Cameron and various social workers in the Arizona child welfare system. Bribes ranging from $500 to $5,000. In exchange, they accidentally lost family reunification paperwork. Paperwork that would have required them to search for biological family connections. Paperwork that would have led them directly to Douglas. Douglas collapsed into his chair, the documents falling from his trembling hands. My God, Cameron, what have you done? I protected what was mine, Cameron said, his voice sharp but defensive now. You can't blame me for fighting for my future. For our future. He gestured at the mansion around them. Everything I did was to preserve this family's legacy. To keep what we built together. We didn't build anything together, Douglas said, his voice breaking. I built it while you schemed to destroy your own brother's life. He wasn't my brother, Cameron snapped. He was a complication. A technicality in a file that could have ruined everything. Liam stood abruptly, the rage he'd been holding back finally boiling over. I was a person. I was your twin. I was alone in group homes while you were here living in luxury, and you knew. You knew, and you made sure I stayed there. You would have done the same thing, Cameron shot back. If you'd found those records first, you would have. Liam lunged. He didn't plan it, didn't think about it. One moment he was standing, and the next his hands were reaching for Cameron's throat. Douglas intercepted him, grabbing his shoulders with surprising strength for a dying man. Liam, stop, Douglas pleaded. Please. This isn't the way. He destroyed my life, Liam shouted, struggling against his father's grip. He kept me in hell for years. For money. I know, Douglas said, and the grief in his voice stopped Liam cold. I know what he did, and I'm the one who enabled it. He released Liam, stepping back with tears streaming down his face. I gave him everything he asked for. I let him blackmail me because I was weak and guilty and terrified of losing another son. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but the truth is I was protecting myself from facing what Sarah did. What I let happen. If you were in Liam's position, could you ever forgive Cameron? Could you forgive Douglas for being manipulated into enabling years of suffering? Some betrayals cut so deep that forgiveness feels impossible. Let us know what you think in the comments, because what's about to happen will test every relationship in this family in ways none of them are prepared for. This isn't on you, Dad, Cameron said, his voice softening slightly. I made choices to protect our interests. That's not a crime. It's exactly a crime, Natalie interjected. Bribery. Obstruction of justice. Interference with child welfare proceedings. I've already consulted with 3 different attorneys. Cameron, you could face serious charges. Cameron's face went pale. You wouldn't. I haven't decided yet, Natalie said. That depends on what happens next. Before anyone could respond, the doorbell rang. Not the gate intercom, the front door itself. Everyone froze. I'm not expecting anyone, Douglas said quietly. One of the security guards appeared in the doorway. Mr. Marsh, your attorney is here. Mr. Peterson. He says it's urgent and can't wait until morning. Douglas frowned. James? At this hour? He checked his watch. Nearly 10 p.m. Send him in. James Peterson entered moments later, a silver-haired man in his 60s wearing a suit despite the late hour. His expression was grave as he took in the scene. The scattered documents, the tear-stained faces, the 2 identical young men staring at each other with barely contained hostility. Douglas, I apologize for the intrusion, but I received some information this evening that requires immediate attention. His eyes moved to Liam. I assume this is the young man you told me about in confidence 2 weeks ago. Liam's head snapped toward Douglas. 2 weeks ago? Douglas had the grace to look ashamed. I hired a private investigator after Natalie told me she suspected you existed. I needed to know the truth before. He gestured helplessly. Before it was too late. Douglas, we need to talk, James said urgently. In private. Now. Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of everyone, Douglas replied. James hesitated, then opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Very well. I received these documents from the county clerk's office this evening. They were filed 3 hours ago. He laid a paper on the coffee table. Someone has filed a legal challenge to your estate. They're claiming you have additional heirs beyond Cameron and Liam. The room went silent. That's impossible, Cameron said. There are only 2 of us. James's expression darkened. The filing claims there's a 3rd child, another heir, and according to these documents, they have DNA evidence to prove it. A 3rd child. Douglas's voice came out strangled. James, that's impossible. Sarah only gave birth to twins. James Peterson set his briefcase on the coffee table with deliberate care. The filing was submitted by a law firm in Seattle representing an unnamed client. They claim to have hospital records, DNA evidence, and witness testimony proving the existence of a 3rd biological child from your marriage to Sarah Marsh. This is absurd, Cameron said, but Liam noticed his twins' hands were shaking. Someone's trying to scam us. First him. He gestured at Liam. And now this mystery heir? It's too convenient. Actually, James said carefully. The timing suggests these events might be connected. But before we address that, there's something else you need to know, Douglas. Something I can't keep from your sons any longer, given the circumstances. He paused. Your most recent medical results came back this afternoon. Douglas's face went pale. James, not now. They need to know. James pulled out another document. Douglas was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer 2 months ago. Stage 4. The prognosis was 6 to 8 weeks. We're now at week 9. The words hung in the air like smoke. Liam felt the room tilt. He'd just found his father, and now he was being told the man was dying? Dad, Cameron's voice cracked, the calculated composure finally shattering. You told me it was treatable. You said the doctors were optimistic. I lied, Douglas said quietly, because I didn't want you to spend my last weeks pretending to grieve while counting your inheritance. The accusation landed like a slap. Cameron recoiled, but didn't deny it. James continued, his voice professionally detached. The family trust has very specific provisions regarding inheritance distribution. If both biological sons are legally acknowledged and documented before Douglas's death, the estate, valued at approximately $100 million plus controlling shares in Marsh Development Corporation, will be split equally between them. $50 million each, Natalie added softly. However, James said, if only one biological son exists in legal records at the time of Douglas's death, that son inherits the entire estate. No division, no sharing. Liam looked at Cameron, understanding flooding through him. That's why you wanted me to show up now. You didn't want me to stay hidden forever. You wanted me to come forward at exactly the right time so you could prove I was a fraud before Dad died. Cameron's silence was answer enough. My God, Douglas breathed. You orchestrated all of this. Liam's arrival, the timing, everything. I did what was necessary, Cameron said, his composure returning like armor. And I have the evidence to prove he's lying. He pulled his phone from his pocket, tapping rapidly. I've spent months preparing for this exact scenario. He held up the screen, showing a document that made Liam's blood run cold. It was his birth certificate, but wrong. The dates didn't match. The hospital name was different. The seal looked amateurish. This is the birth certificate Liam's been using, Cameron announced. Forged. Badly. The hospital listed doesn't even have a maternity ward. The attending physician's signature belongs to someone who died in 2005. It's a con job, and I can prove it. That's not my birth certificate, Liam protested. I've never seen that document before in my life. Really? Cameron's smile was vicious. Because I have surveillance footage of you reviewing this exact document at a FedEx print shop in Tempe 3 months ago. Time-stamped. Geotagged. Everything. Natalie stood abruptly. That's enough, Cameron. I know what you're doing, and it won't work. She retrieved her own folder from the desk. I had Liam's DNA tested against samples from Douglas's last physical. The lab confirmed a 99.97% probability of paternity. I also have the original hospital records from Phoenix General showing twin births to Sarah Marsh on March 15, 2007. Both babies survived. Both were given footprint cards. The records are authentic and verified. Cameron didn't even flinch. Then explain this. He tapped his phone again, and a video began playing on the screen. It showed Liam, or someone who looked exactly like him, sitting in what appeared to be a hotel room, talking to someone off camera. Look, I know it's risky, video Liam was saying, but the old man's dying. If I can convince him I'm his long-lost son, I can get my hands on half that fortune. Maybe all of it if the other kid doesn't wise up. Birth certificates are easy to fake. DNA tests can be manipulated. All I need is a few weeks of playing the tragic foster kid. And, that's not me, Liam shouted. I never said any of that. I've never been in that room. Deepfake, Natalie said immediately. Cameron, you created this using AI and surveillance footage. I know because I've been tracking your online activity. You paid $15,000 to a company in Romania that specializes in this exact technology. This is where everything changes. If these twists have you on the edge of your seat, please subscribe. We need your support to keep bringing you stories that hit this hard. Don't miss what happens next, because what's about to unfold will push this family past the breaking point. Prove it, Cameron challenged. Prove that video is fake in a court of law before Dad dies. Can you do that in weeks? Days? Because that's all the time we have left. Douglas stood, his face flushed with anger and something else, pain. Stop. Both of you, just stop. He pressed a hand to his chest, breathing hard. This isn't about money or inheritance, or, his words cut off as he doubled over. Dad, both twins moved simultaneously, reaching for their father as he collapsed forward. Douglas. Natalie grabbed her phone, dialing 911 as she rushed to his side. James knelt beside Douglas, checking his pulse. His heart rate is irregular. The stress is too much for his condition. Douglas's eyes found Liam's, then Cameron's. Both, my sons, he managed, his voice weak. Both real. Stop fighting. Please. Ambulance is on the way, Natalie said, her voice shaking. Hang on, Douglas. Just hang on. Cameron backed away, his face ashen. For the first time since Liam arrived, his twin looked genuinely afraid. Dad, I didn't mean for. I wasn't trying to. But Douglas's eyes had closed, his breathing shallow and labored. Through the open windows, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The sound of time running out. The paramedics moved with practiced efficiency, loading Douglas onto a stretcher while their radios crackled with medical jargon Liam couldn't understand. Douglas's face had turned an alarming shade of gray, his breathing shallow and rapid. Sir, can you hear me? One paramedic asked, shining a light in Douglas's eyes. Sir, stay with us. I'm riding with him, Natalie said, climbing into the ambulance without waiting for permission. Family only. The paramedic started, then looked at the two identical young men standing in the driveway and seemed to give up on understanding the situation. Fine. One person. The rest of you can follow. Cameron was already moving toward his Tesla. I'm going to Mayo Clinic, he called over his shoulder, phone pressed to his ear. Yes, I need you at the hospital immediately. File the emergency injunction. I don't care what time it is. Wake the judge if you have to. Liam stood frozen for a moment, watching the ambulance pull away, sirens wailing into the Phoenix night. James Peterson touched his shoulder. I'll drive you. Come on. The drive to Mayo Clinic Hospital took 20 minutes that felt like hours. James navigated the late-night traffic in silence while Liam stared out the window, his mind racing. His father, a man he'd known for less than 3 hours, was dying, and his twin brother was using those final moments to destroy him legally. He's scared, James said quietly, breaking the silence. Cameron, Liam's voice came out bitter. He seems pretty confident to me. Confidence and fear often look the same from the outside, James replied. I've known Cameron since he was 8 years old. I've watched him build walls around himself after Sarah left. What he's doing to you is unconscionable, but it comes from a place of terror. Terror of losing everything. Terror of being replaced. Terror that his father's love was never really his to begin with. That doesn't excuse. No, James agreed. It doesn't. But it might help you understand what you're up against. They arrived at the hospital to find Cameron already in the waiting room, surrounded by 3 attorneys in suits who looked annoyed at being summoned at midnight. Cameron was speaking rapidly, gesturing with his hands, his composure fully restored. Fraudulent claimant seeking to exploit my father's terminal condition. We need an emergency order preventing any legal recognition of paternity until proper verification can be completed through the courts. One of the lawyers noticed Liam's arrival and did a visible double-take at the identical faces. Jesus Christ. They really are twins. Alleged twins, Cameron corrected sharply. That's the entire point. Liam took a seat on the opposite side of the waiting room, as far from Cameron as possible. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A television mounted in the corner played muted news coverage. Every few minutes, a nurse would pass through, and each one did a double-take at the 2 identical young men sitting across from each other like hostile mirrors. At 12:47 a.m., a doctor in scrubs emerged through the double doors. Both brothers stood simultaneously. Family of Douglas Marsh. I'm his son, Cameron said. So am I, Liam added. The doctor looked between them, clearly confused, then seemed to decide it wasn't her problem. Mr. Marsh suffered a significant cardiac episode. The stress triggered arrhythmia and accelerated the deterioration of his condition. We've stabilized him for now, but, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Given his underlying cancer and the weakness of his system, I need to be frank with you. He may have days remaining, possibly hours. We're doing everything we can to keep him comfortable. The words hit Liam like a physical blow. Days, not weeks. Days. Cameron's face had gone pale, but he recovered quickly. Can we see him? Not yet. We're running additional tests and monitoring his vitals. I'll update you when there's more information. The doctor retreated back through the double doors. Cameron immediately turned to his lawyers. This changes the timeline. We need that injunction filed tonight. If he regains consciousness, he might try to sign documents acknowledging both of us. We can't let that happen until we've proven. Until you've proven I'm a fraud, Liam finished. Just say it, Cameron. You're hoping Dad dies before he can make this official. You're hoping your own father dies so you can steal my inheritance. It's not stealing if it was never yours to begin with, Cameron shot back. Would you fight for an inheritance from a father you just met? Is it about the money, or about being acknowledged as someone who mattered? What's the right thing to do when your twin is actively working to erase your existence? Drop your thoughts below, because the answer isn't as simple as it seems, and what happens next will force both brothers to confront what they're really fighting for. James stepped between them. Both of you need to stop. Your father is dying in that room, and you're out here fighting over money he hasn't even left yet. This isn't about money, Liam said, his voice cracking. I don't care about the money. I just wanted to know my father. To have a family. To understand where I came from. Then why are you here? Cameron challenged. If you don't care about the inheritance, why show up at all? Because I deserve to know the truth, Liam shouted. Because I spent 18 years alone wondering why I wasn't wanted. Because you had everything, and you still couldn't let me have even this. Cameron opened his mouth to respond, but movement near the nurse's station stopped him. A young nurse was approaching, carrying a sealed manila envelope. She looked nervous as she approached both twins. I'm looking for, she checked the envelope. The lost one. Those were Mr. Marsh's instructions. He said one of you would understand what that meant. Liam's breath caught. The lost one. That was him. Douglas had left him something. He stepped forward. That's me. The nurse handed him the envelope, her eyes moving between the identical faces with obvious confusion. He made me promise to give this to you if he became incapacitated. He taped it under his bedside drawer before the ambulance arrived. Said it was urgent. Liam's hands shook as he took the envelope. It was sealed with tape and marked in shaky handwriting. For my lost son, the truth about everything. Cameron moved forward. Whatever that says, it's not legally binding. A deathbed confession doesn't override. Shut up, Liam said quietly, tearing open the seal. Inside was a letter, several pages long, written in Douglas's increasingly unsteady handwriting. And beneath the letter, a photograph that made Liam's blood run cold. It showed a young woman, Sarah Marsh, based on the resemblance, standing outside a hospital, holding 2 infants. But she wasn't alone. Another person stood beside her, partially obscured by the photo's edge. Just enough visible to see they were holding a third bundle wrapped in a hospital blanket. The timestamp on the photo read, March 16, 2007. One day after Liam and Cameron were born. Liam stared at the photograph, his hands trembling. 3 babies. Not 2. 3. What is that? Cameron moved closer, trying to see over Liam's shoulder. Liam pulled the letter from the envelope, his eyes scanning Douglas's increasingly unsteady handwriting. The first line made his throat tighten. To my lost son, if you're reading this, I'm either gone or close to it. You deserve the truth. All of it. Read it out loud, James said gently. Whatever Douglas wanted you to know, we all need to hear it. Liam's voice shook as he began. Liam, I want you to understand that what happened to you wasn't random cruelty. It was the result of choices made by desperate, flawed people, including me. Your mother, Sarah, and I divorced when you and Cameron were 3 months old. It wasn't a peaceful separation. Sarah had discovered I'd been involved in some questionable financial dealings with Marsh Development. Not illegal exactly, but close enough that public exposure would have destroyed everything I'd built. Cameron's face went pale. Dad was involved in financial crimes. Questionable dealings, Liam corrected, continuing to read. Sarah threatened to expose everything unless I gave her full custody of both of you. She said she'd go to the media, to the SEC, to anyone who would listen. I was terrified, not just of losing the company, but of prison, of leaving both my sons without a father. So I agreed. I signed away custody and gave her a substantial settlement to keep quiet. Liam paused, his eyes moving faster over the next section. The words were harder to read as Douglas's handwriting deteriorated. But Sarah wasn't well, Liam continued, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't realize how much she was struggling until it was too late. The pressure of raising 2 infants alone, combined with whatever had been building in her mind. He stopped, swallowing hard. She made a choice I'll never understand and never forgive. She placed you for adoption, Liam, without telling me, without giving me a chance to fight for you. And then she told me you died. Complications from a heart defect, she said. She even showed me forged hospital documents and a death certificate. Jesus, James breathed. I held a funeral for you. Liam read, tears now streaming down his face. A small service. Just me and a few close friends who didn't know the truth about the divorce. I mourned you, Liam. Every day for 18 years, I mourned the son I thought I'd lost. Cameron had gone completely still, his face unreadable. When you showed up at the house tonight, it was like seeing a ghost, the letter continued. But also like answering a question I'd been too afraid to ask. Part of me always wondered if Sarah had lied. I spent years searching for evidence, hiring investigators, checking adoption records. But the trail was cold, and eventually I convinced myself I was chasing shadows. That grief was making me see possibilities where none existed. I'm so sorry I didn't search harder. I'm so sorry I believed her. Liam's voice cracked. The truth is, I failed you twice. Once when I gave Sarah custody to save myself, and again when I let her convince me you were gone. Cameron has been the son I raised, but you are equally my son. My blood. My responsibility. And I abandoned you to a system that should never have had you in the first place. The waiting room had gone completely silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant beeping of medical equipment. Sarah disappeared with Cameron shortly after your supposed death. Liam continued reading. I didn't see either of them for almost 3 years. When she finally contacted me again, she was struggling financially and offered me custody of Cameron in exchange for more money. I took him immediately. I never told him the truth about you, that he'd had a twin who I believed was dead. I wanted to protect him from that pain, from knowing his mother had been capable of such deception. Cameron's eyes were wet now, his earlier hostility replaced by something rawer. Confusion, grief, betrayal. I've spent 18 years wondering where Sarah went, whether she's alive, whether she's suffering the way she made all of us suffer. Liam read. 2 months ago, after my diagnosis, I hired one final investigator, the best in the business, and he found something. A property deed registered under Sarah's maiden name, Sterling, a cabin in Montana, near Glacier National Park. The coordinates are 47.8721 degrees north, 113.9940 degrees west. I don't know if she's there. I don't know if she's even alive. But if you're reading this, and if you want answers about why she did what she did, that's where I'd start looking. If you just found out your mother had been alive all these years, would you want to find her or leave the past buried? Would you demand answers or walk away? What would you say to her if you could? Tell us in the comments, because what Liam and Cameron are about to discover will rewrite everything they thought they knew about their family. The letter ends with a warning. Liam said, his voice barely audible. Sarah isn't well. She wasn't well 18 years ago, and if she's been living alone in isolation all this time, I can't imagine she's improved. Be careful, both of you. You're brothers, whether you like each other or not. You're all each other has left. Don't let my mistakes and her illness destroy whatever chance you have at being family. Liam lowered the letter, the coordinates burning in his mind. 47.8721 degrees north, 113.9940 degrees west. His mother, the woman who'd given birth to him and then erased him from existence. She was out there, potentially alive, potentially within reach. We need to. Cameron started. His iPhone vibrated loudly on the plastic chair beside him, the sound cutting through the heavy silence. Everyone's eyes moved to the screen illuminating in the dim waiting room. The caller ID read simply, Mom. Cameron stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. His face had gone completely white. Answer it, Liam said. I can't. I haven't spoken to her in 15 years. She just disappeared after Dad got custody. She'd call sometimes, leave voicemails, but I never. The phone continued vibrating. Second ring. Third ring. Answer it, James urged. If that's really Sarah, we need to know. Cameron's hand shook as he reached for the phone. His finger hovered over the answer button. Fourth ring. He answered, putting it on speaker with trembling hands. Hello. Silence. Then a woman's voice, calm and measured, with an unsettling clarity. Hello, Cameron. I see you found your brother. The voice coming through Cameron's phone was eerily calm, almost pleasant, like someone calling to chat about the weather. But the words were anything but casual. I see you found your brother, Cameron. Liam's breath caught. That voice, he'd never heard it before, yet something in his DNA recognized it. His mother. Cameron's hand trembled so violently that Liam reached over and grabbed the phone, holding it steady between them. Who is this? Liam demanded, though he already knew. A soft laugh. Liam. My lost boy. I'm glad you made it to the house safely. I was worried you might lose your nerve at the last moment. You know who I am? Liam's voice came out strangled. Of course I know who you are. I've known exactly where you were for 18 years. Every group home, every school, every job. The calmness in her voice was more terrifying than anger would have been. Tell me, did you like the birth certificate I made sure you'd find? I paid Ms. Rodriguez very well to include it in your discharge paperwork. The waiting room had gone completely silent. Even Cameron's lawyers had stopped their whispered conversations. You've been watching me, Liam said slowly. All this time, you've been watching me. Watching, waiting, planning. Sarah's voice took on a dreamy quality. Tell Liam I've been waiting 18 years to finish what I started, Cameron. Tell him everything I did had a purpose. What purpose? Cameron finally found his voice. Mom, what are you? Where are you? Where I've always been, sweetheart. Close. Closer than you think. Her voice hardened slightly. And tell Douglas the statute of limitations is up on everything he did. Time to collect what's owed. Douglas is dying, Liam shouted at the phone. He's in the hospital right now because of the stress of your arrival, Sarah finished. Yes, I know. I was there when it happened. Such unfortunate timing. She didn't sound sympathetic. She sounded satisfied. You were there? Cameron's face had gone from pale to gray. At the house. I've been at the house all day, Cameron. Someone had to make sure everything went according to plan. The line went dead. For several seconds, no one moved. Then James was on his feet, dialing hospital security with shaking hands. We need to pull surveillance footage. Now. And I need officers stationed outside Douglas's room immediately. Cameron stared at his phone screen, the call log showing a number with a Montana area code. She called from. He looked up at Liam. The coordinates. That's a Montana number. Not quite, one of Cameron's lawyers said, already typing on his laptop. I'm running a trace. The call originated from. He paused, face going pale. It's pinging off a cell tower in Scottsdale. Paradise Valley, specifically. She's still at the mansion, Liam breathed. James was already speaking rapidly to someone on the phone. Yes, I need security footage from the Marsh estate for the past 24 hours. Any visitors, any service personnel, anyone who came through those gates. What do you think Sarah's planning? Why wait 18 years to make contact? Why orchestrate Liam's arrival at this exact moment? Drop your theories below because what hospital security is about to find will prove that Sarah Marsh has been playing a game so complex, so calculated, that nobody saw it coming. We want to hear what you think happens next. A hospital security officer arrived within minutes, tablet in hand. Mr. Peterson, I have the footage you requested. He set the tablet on the waiting room table, and everyone crowded around. The video showed the mansion's front gate at 6:23 a.m. that morning. A woman in scrubs approached, carrying a briefcase and wearing a visitor badge. The timestamp was clear. She pressed the intercom, spoke briefly, and the gates opened. Zoom in on her face, James instructed. The security officer complied. The image pixelated slightly, but remained clear enough. The woman was in her mid-40s, with dark hair pulled back in a bun. Her features were partially obscured by sunglasses, but the bone structure was unmistakable. Cameron made a choking sound. That's her. That's Mom. The badge says Patricia Newman, hospice nurse, the security officer noted. She presented credentials that checked out when the gate guard verified them. She told him she was there to check on Mr. Marsh's medication schedule and home care setup. Those credentials were fake. James asked. We don't know yet. We're checking with the hospice agency now. Natalie appeared through the double doors, her face drawn. I just spoke with our head of security. I told him to check the guest house. She looked at both twins, her voice shaking. It's staged. Set up like someone's been living there. There are photos on the walls. Photos of both of you throughout your childhoods. That's impossible, Cameron said. How would she have photos of? He stopped, understanding dawning. The private investigators I hired to track Liam. She must have hacked my accounts. Seen everything I was seeing. Or she hired her own investigators, Liam said quietly. She's been tracking both of us. Probably for years. The The security officer was scrolling through more footage. She left the property at 7:15 p.m., right around the time of Mr. Marsh's collapse. He looked up. But here's the thing. The call you just received? Our system logged it. It came from inside the estate's property line. From the guest house specifically, even though the footage shows she left hours ago. She left a phone behind, James said. Programmed to call at a specific time. Or she's still there, Liam countered. Maybe she left through a back entrance that isn't monitored. Cameron's phone buzzed again, this time with a text message from the same Montana number. Check Douglas's office safe. Password is the boy's birthday. You'll understand why I had to disappear and why I'm back now. Mom. Cameron's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. She wants us to go back to the house. This is a trap. This has to be a trap. Or she's telling the truth about the safe, Natalie said. Douglas kept documents there. Important things. Things he didn't want anyone to find. I haven't talked to her in 15 years, Cameron said suddenly, his voice breaking. She'd call sometimes. Leave voicemails. Birthday messages. Asking how I was doing. Apologizing for leaving. I never answered. Never called back. After a while, the calls stopped. He looked at Liam, tears streaming down his face. I thought she'd given up. Moved on. But she never stopped watching, did she? No, Liam said quietly. She never stopped. She's been planning this for 18 years. James stood abruptly. I'm calling the police. This has gone beyond family drama. If Sarah has been inside that house, leaving messages, staging scenes, she needs to be found and questioned. Wait, Cameron said. The safe. If there's something in there that explains. Explains what? Liam demanded. Why she abandoned me. Why she lied to Dad. Why she's been stalking both of us for years. Maybe, Cameron said. His earlier hostility had completely dissolved, replaced by fear. Or maybe it explains what she meant about collecting what's owed. The drive back to Scottsdale felt like a nightmare in reverse, returning to the place where everything started, except now the mansion felt less like an answer and more like a trap. Cameron drove his Tesla while Liam rode with James, two police cruisers following close behind with lights flashing but sirens silent. She wants us there, Liam said, watching the darkened Phoenix suburbs blur past. She's been controlling everything from the beginning. This is exactly what she planned. Then we're walking into whatever she is waiting, James replied grimly. But we don't have a choice. If those documents explain what's happening, they will, Liam interrupted. She wouldn't have left them if they didn't. They arrived at the mansion at 3:47 a.m. The estate was blazing with lights, security guards stationed at every entrance, police officers already sweeping the grounds. Cameron was out of his car before it fully stopped, running toward the guest house with Liam close behind. The guest house door stood open, illuminated from within. They entered together, and both stopped dead. The walls were covered in photographs. Hundreds of them. Liam at age 5 in a group home cafeteria. Cameron at age 5 at his birthday party in the mansion. Liam at age 10 wearing a donated coat. Cameron at age 10 in a designer suit at some gala. Side by side, year by year, a parallel timeline of two lives that should have been one. Oh my God, Cameron breathed. She's been documenting everything. Our entire childhoods. In the center of the room, a leather briefcase sat on the bed, positioned like an offering. Liam opened it with shaking hands. Legal documents filled the interior. Lawsuit filings. Court records. Financial statements. All dated over the past 18 years. All involving Douglas Marsh and Marsh Development Corporation. She's been suing him, Liam said, pulling out page after page. Look at this. Wrongful termination, emotional distress, breach of contract. She filed a new case every 2 years like clockwork. They were all dismissed, Cameron noted, reading over his shoulder. Insufficient evidence. Statute of limitations. Lack of standing. He pulled out a thicker document. But this one's different. It was a financial audit report dated 6 months ago. The header read, Investigation into Marsh Development Corporation Financial Irregularities, 2006 to 2007. Liam scanned the pages, his confusion mounting. Wait, this says Mom was the CFO? I thought Dad ran the company alone. He did, Cameron said slowly, after she left. But before that, he flipped to the summary page, and his face went white. The financial crimes Dad mentioned in his letter. The ones Sarah threatened to expose. They weren't his crimes. They were hers. The report detailed a sophisticated embezzlement scheme. Sarah had been systematically diverting funds from Marsh Development Corporation into offshore accounts, using shell companies and falsified records. The total amount stolen, $47 million over an 18-month period. Douglas discovered it during the divorce, Liam read aloud. He had evidence. Proof. But instead of prosecuting her, his voice caught. He covered it up, absorbed the losses, told the board it was bad investments. He protected her. To protect us, Cameron finished. He didn't want us to know our mother was a criminal. So he let her walk away with the money and his silence. But that wasn't the end of the documents. At the bottom of the briefcase, Liam found a life insurance policy. The beneficiary line made his blood run cold. Sarah Sterling Marsh, $20 million. This was filed during their marriage, James said, appearing in the doorway with two officers. And according to the dates, it was never canceled. If Douglas dies, Sarah collects $20 million. She's been the beneficiary this entire time. Cameron's phone buzzed. Another text. The guest house is just the beginning. Check Douglas's office safe. Password is the boy's birthday. You'll understand why I had to disappear and why I'm back now. Mom. Both brothers looked at each other, then ran. Douglas's home office was exactly as he'd left it. Mahogany desk, leather chair, walls lined with awards and photographs. The safe was hidden behind a painting of the Scottsdale desert at sunset. Cameron's hands shook as he entered the combination 0-3-1-5-0-7. March 15, 2007. Their birthday. The safe clicked open. Inside were more documents. Medical records. Psychiatric evaluations. Hospital admission forms. All bearing Sarah's name. She was hospitalized, Liam said, pulling out the records. Multiple times. Starting when we were 6 months old. Severe postpartum depression. Psychotic episodes. Delusional thinking. He flipped through page after page. Dad had her committed twice. She spent 3 months in a psychiatric facility right before the divorce. But she was declared competent, Cameron noted, finding the discharge papers. Fit to stand trial. Fit to have custody. The doctors cleared her. Or she convinced them to, Liam countered. He found another document. A sworn affidavit signed by Sarah and dated 2 weeks before Liam's adoption. Listen to this. I, Sarah Marsh, being of sound mind, hereby declare that I placed my son for adoption due to my inability to care for 2 children while suffering from severe financial hardship. I did not inform the father as I believed he would attempt to take both children from me, and I could not bear to lose them both. That's a lie, Cameron said. Dad said she told him you died. She showed him a death certificate. Maybe she showed him what he wanted to see, James suggested. If he was desperate to believe you were gone, Liam, he might not have looked too closely at the documents. A final envelope sat at the back of the safe, marked simply, the truth. Liam opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a birth certificate, but not his or Cameron's. This one was dated March 16, 2007, 1 day after their birth. The mother's name, Sarah Sterling Marsh. The father's name, Douglas Marsh. The child's name, Emma Grace Marsh. There were 3 of us, Liam breathed. The photograph. The third baby, Emma. This story isn't over, not even close. If you need part 2, you have to let us know right now. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and most importantly, comment part 2 below. What happened to Emma? Why did Douglas and Sarah hide her existence? Where has Sarah been for 18 years, and what is she planning now? If this video doesn't get enough engagement, we can't justify continuing the story. Don't let this end here. We're counting on you. Comment part 2 right now. Before either brother could process what they were reading, Cameron's phone rang. Natalie's name flashed on the screen. He answered on speaker. You need to get back to the hospital, Natalie said, her voice tight with panic. Douglas just woke up. He's asking for Sarah. And her voice broke. And there's a woman here. She just walked into his room. Security didn't stop her because she's wearing a doctor's coat and hospital credentials. But Cameron, I saw her face. It's your mother. Sarah is in the room with Douglas right now.